There's some lovely faggots in the window.
Are there? We can have some for our tea.
Delicious. I haven't seen a real faggot in years. I don't know anyone in England who doesn't like crackling, except those poor unfortunate vegetarians, I suppose. Seems a pity. Annie Oakley, here I come. But if I shoot the herder, they'll holler bloody murder, 'cause you can't get a man with a gun. With a gun.
One day she come up. She said, "You will not believe what the BBC want me to do now." I said, "What's that, Jennifer?" She said, "They want me to drive in this monstrosity of a motorbike with another fat woman as pillion," she said. "It will never take off," she said. I said, "Is that just going to be a one-off, Jennifer?" She said, "I hope so."
It was far from a one-off. Two Fat Ladies roared onto British screens in 1996. It quickly became a worldwide hit, making stars of little-known food writers Jennifer Paterson and Clarissa Dixon Wright.
My first reactions to Jennifer were that she was somewhat eccentric and very funny, but I didn't immediately know that I would like her. But then what was so extraordinary was the minute they pointed a camera at us, the minute we started cooking in front of a camera, it was as though we had been best friends forever. And we just got on. And that was, I think, what people related to on the television set.
I remember having baked potatoes on the front in Hastings.
No, really?
What did I do?
Yes, I'm sure you did. Yes, sorry about that.
The chemistry was very good, and also they were breaking all the rules too, which is another of the fascinations. I mean, beringed, painted fingers going in and stirring things, and these extraordinary breaks into song.
Mamma, yo quiero a mamma, da chupeta, da chupeta, da chupeta para beber no chorar. Mamma, yo quiero. Mamma, yo quiero. Mamma, yo quiero a mamma. What on earth is going on?
These women behaving badly, with their uncompromising approach to life and food, won them many fans.
Oh, Juliana, we're just having fun.
Thank you very much.
I just commend to your attention the moment when they spread butter on a piece of bread. Now, I don't know anyone else in television who would spread butter with quite that sense of pornographic zeal. And you can see that they really love that butter, and they are determined that as many people as possible should die early because they've eaten it.
And here I've got a nice jug of double cream.
That's what I'd like to see, a whole jug of double cream.
No nonsense here.
Two Fat Ladies, from the outset, was no ordinary cookery show. And what was truly special, I think, was the way in which both Jennifer and Clarissa peppered each and every episode with extraordinary stories of their past lives and adventures. These were unbelievable tales. They both had unbelievable lives.
More germs you eat, the less ill you're going to be. My mother always said you must eat them, because then you get yourself inoculated from them. We were brought up on water from the Yangtze.
The Yangtze?
And none of us have ever had any of these salmonella nonsense.
The Yangtze, that's wonderful. I can't top that one.
Jennifer Paterson was born in April 1928. She spent her first 4 years in China, where her father worked for the Asiatic Petroleum Company. It was a privileged existence for Jennifer and her brother. When the family returned to Britain in 1932 for the birth of another son, Jennifer lost the undivided attention of her Chinese ama, or nanny. Now, with two brothers, she had to fight to be noticed.
As my sister much preferred boys to girls, she'd made much more fuss of the eldest boy, who was a very beautiful little boy, but Jennifer was seen to in her every whim by this armour. And when they got home, I think that's when she got the habit of showing off and being amusing. But you know, if you do that, the next child pushes you out of the way and does their turn. And I think it was rather hard on her. And I do think she was sent to boarding school because, you know, they were sort of rather moving about, probably too young, because she was very naughty there.
Jennifer was sent to her mother's old convent school when she was 8. The nuns succeeded with Jennifer's religious education, but her unruly behaviour ensured that she left the school sooner than planned.
Jennifer was expelled. We always heard it was because she was running a protection racket. And also, on one occasion, she was found suspiciously swinging a roller skate in the vicinity of a child with a broken tooth. And so Madame Rita, the Reverend Mother, wrote to my mother and said, much as we love dear Jennifer, we do think that life at the school would be calmer if she was removed forthwith.
Jennifer left the Assumption Convent with no qualifications other than certificates for religious knowledge and public speaking. Temperamentally unsuited to formal education, Jennifer's interest lay in a more theatrical direction.
Jennifer must have been about 10, and her ambition then was to be a circus performer. I think we had been taken to Bertram Mills and she had seen little girls riding on the backs of horses in tutus, and I think this took her fancy, but she didn't really have the figure for it. Even when young, you might say she was a sturdy child.
What I wanted to be always when I was a little girl, I wanted to be the lady on the horse jumping out through the hoop in a beautiful pink tutu.
Well, I'm sure that could be arranged.
Jennifer never performed in a circus, but took every opportunity to play the clown. With her love of fancy dress parties and amateur dramatics, a theatrical career seemed an obvious choice. Despite a couple of lucky breaks, it never quite took off. In the 1950s, she got to know Jonathan Routh, creator of the early hit television show Candid Camera. Jennifer's role was to draw members of the public into increasingly comic situations secretly captured on film. Then came an eye-catching part in Fish and Milligan, a 1965 film starring Spike Milligan and Arthur Mullard.
Everybody could see she'd make a very good actress. Why nobody ever pushed her, I do not know, because she might have been, one of our great sort of character actors. She might have been Dame Jennifer Paterson at the end of her year.
And good old Worcester, of course. Time-honoured Worcester.
Hail!
Hail, time-honoured Worcester, hast thou, according to thine oath and ban, brought hither Hereford, thy son.
Yes, Jennifer, get on with the cooking. Cut the Shakespeare.
Jennifer inherited her theatrical ambitions from her father, a passionate amateur musician. At the end of the war, Robert Paterson, still a serving officer, was stationed in Berlin, charged with reviving the Berlin Opera and Ballet. For the 18-year-old Jennifer, life was a social whirl. Her love of parties never left her.
When I came back from the Pacific in '46, I found her very much the belle of the ball in Berlin, with lots of soldiers dancing attendance upon her. She wasn't glamorous, but she was fun. She was attractive. And people were, of course, amused by her because she was still being the enfant terrible. She was popular, all right, and good value.
Jennifer had a variety of boyfriends. I can remember an American one and really rather a serious English one. It came to naught in the end. I don't quite know why. Jennifer told me once that she used to get the giggles when people proposed to her. And of course that must have been rather sort of crushing for people when those days young men got down on their knees and Jennifer sort of giggling away.
She was a bit putting off with her noisiness and her outspokenness and saying exactly what she thought about you and personal remarks and that. She never meant it really maliciously, I don't think, but some people are very sensitive, particularly young men.
In Berlin, Jennifer developed the independent streak that characterized her later life.
Jennifer and her parents went their separate ways in Berlin, partly because they were totally wrapped up in their musical world, and there were so many parties for the young people.
It was then that I think her mother, anyway, made it quite clear that once this Berlin life, this lovely life, was ended, Jennifer would have to get a job and support herself, that she wasn't going to be able to just sit at home with them.
Now 20, with no qualifications and no husband, Jennifer went to Portugal to work as a nanny for a wealthy family. It was the first of many such jobs, and although it was badly paid, Jennifer still enjoyed the high life. She was fun to be around, and so was never short of a party invitation. Between jobs, Jennifer would rejoin her family, now living in Taormina in Sicily. Among the bohemian and predominantly homosexual crowd the resort attracted, Jennifer was in great demand. A close friend was the well-known health guru Gaylord Hauser, who famously turned down a date with Greta Garbo to be with Jennifer. Hauser nicknamed Jennifer the Mermaid of Taormina because of her love of swimming.
He was about 56, and Jennifer must have been about 22. Anyway, there was an instant sort of an attraction. I mean, not a sexual one, but they, were just good friends, and he was amused by Jennifer. And she used to go down there every day, and of course they were great ones for parties at night. And Jennifer was, you might say, the life and soul of the party.
Hauser advocated healthy eating, particularly buckwheat and yogurt, but his dietary advice clearly did not rub off on his young friend.
Now I've got a lovely bowl of Cornish cream, and we'll add that. This is nice and rich. I like rich food. None of this nonsense about yogurt instead of cream. Yogurt is not instead of cream. Yogurt is very good for your breakfast, or if you have a poor tummy, or if you're a vegetarian or something. But for cream, there is nothing better than cream.
Jennifer's mother did not let her daughter linger in Taormina. When her Aunt Farah needed a helper, Jennifer was dispatched to Benghazi in Libya. It was here that Jennifer learned to cook and developed her famously robust culinary tastes.
Jennifer was in between her various jobs that she got, and I was very pregnant with my fourth baby, so that's really how she came, because she could keep an eye on the other ones. The cooking she more or less had to take over, but she hadn't a clue. The first Sunday lunch, she was absolutely panic-stricken, but she took to it and got really interested and used to go to the souk and bring the most extraordinary things back.
Now then, what's the most bizarre thing you've ever cooked in the most bizarre place? Is there something you think, what are we doing
I'll
here?
tell you exactly. I've got it in one. I don't know about you.
Well, you go first.
By mistake, I cooked testicles in Benghazi.
We aren't talking sweetbreads here, are we?
No, well, I thought they were, but they weren't. They were testicles.
Testicles.
And very delicious.
Yes.
It was before I knew a lot about cooking.
Oh, or anything else.
Yeah, well, absolutely, I didn't know what they looked like.
No, well.
In the 1950s, Jennifer moved to London. She had no permanent home and little money. With nothing more to offer than her domestic skills, she sought out jobs with good addresses and a room attached. This haphazard way of life continued for the next 30 years. In 1964, she became the cook and matron for an eccentric educational establishment, Padworth College, near Reading. The teaching staff included a former Ethiopian Minister of Justice and a monk who was employed to write poetry.
I remember her telling me that she was a matron at some poor girl's school. I don't mean stool for poor girls, but unfortunate girls if she was the matron. No such thing as period pains, darling. I always sent them away if they came to me with period pains.
If anybody had the curse and was groaning, she would give them gin, saying it goes straight to the womb. And she said that was all that was needed for girls. And it seemed to work. I don't think anybody was carted off to hospital.
While at Padworth, Jennifer acquired her first motorbike. The taste for two wheels remained with her all her life.
Oh, hell, I've forgotten my lime squeezer! Ah, no, it's all right. Here it is.
Aged 40, she started working for an African legation, but diplomacy was not one of Jennifer's strengths.
At one stage, for some reason, she got a job at the Ugandan High Commission, or whatever it's called, in London. And this went all right for a bit. She was quite happy with all the people there and cooked for them and did all sorts of things.
Her job was to take the breakfast in to the High Commissioner. And on one occasion, somebody said, I wonder if you take 2 breakfasts into His Excellency's bedroom. And she said, well, why is that? Is he very hungry? Well, no, he's got a young lady with him in bed. And Jennifer said, no, I'm not taking the breakfast in to the High Commissioner. And they said, oh, everybody's got to have their little bit of fun, haven't they? And she replied, only if you're a complete animal. And she then hurled the breakfast tray to the floor and walked out. But most of her jobs ended with her throwing something and walking out.
Another housekeeping job followed, this time for a family in Montpellier Walk. She stayed for 5 years. It was the longest full-time job she ever had.
I needed a temporary housekeeper cook for a while and put an advertisement in the Times, and there were several responses, one of which was Jennifer's. I thought she was a bit grand, when she came. I thought she was a bit grand. But in fact, there was nothing she didn't do. When we had guests, she was great. She'd serve guests. She knew some of the guests almost better than we did, I have to admit that. It was quite usual for someone to leap up and give her a great bear hug and say, hello, Jennifer.
We all used to use her when we had a dinner party. And she was extremely cheap. And all she needed was a large whiskey and a great deal of attention. And she would arrive quite often with the food on that little scooter and then wobbled off in the early hours to her extraordinary sad and dusty flat in the shadow of the cathedral.
At the age of 49, Jennifer was forced to rely on her family for a roof over her head when the last of her live-in jobs dried up. She moved into a flat with her elderly uncle Anthony.
When she came here, she hadn't had a home of her own, ever. So she arrived, you might say, just with a suitcase. This must have been a good 20 years or more ago. It was more or less all her life, if she hadn't been with her parents. She had living-in jobs. Consequently, she'd had rather an interesting life, rather like a cuckoo living in other people's nests, always. And they were nearly always fairly well-to-do people.
She didn't value success in the ordinary vulgar sense of the word at all. And the fact that she herself had been, by ordinary worldly standards, a complete failure, I don't think it ever crossed her mind. I don't think she felt sorry for herself. She wished she had a bit more money, because she was stuck in a flat with barely enough money to spend on cigarettes much of the time, except what she earned from doing odd jobs. Cigarettes and booze were her only luxuries.
We have nothing to steal in our house. My uncle always says if a burglar visited us, they'd leave us a tip.
She always wore the same funny clothes. She wore a sort of fisherman's smock thing, and some trousers which looked rather like the sort of trousers men wear in fish and chip shops, or nappies. And she wore espadrilles always for some reason. Seemed to think it was ridiculous to wear anything else, even other people. She was, we're wearing funny, shoes, strange obvious we're wearing shoes, as though everybody should wear espadrilles in the middle of winter in London.
I've been inspecting your legs as well. Now, look.
I've got a dainty ankle.
Have you?
And
yes.
a dainty wrist.
Right, or
and
two,
the rest
probably.
I cover in a tent.
She said she liked those smocks so that you could put your cigarettes and your lighter and your glass should even be balanced in them while you were lighting your cigarette. I think that was the point of it.
She liked her drink of vodka in the mornings, and she liked her drink of whiskey in the evenings, and she liked to smoke all day.
The extrovert Jennifer and her saintly Uncle Anthony led totally separate lives under the same roof for over 20 years.
We decided it was simpler to run our own lives, so we kept up quite happily what one might call a form of unarmed combat in a way.
Jennifer was a very social being. She wasn't married. She never had companions in her bedroom or her bathroom or her dining room at home. So when she was out, she needed company nearly all the time.
Do you go to many cocktail parties these days?
I do, as a matter of fact, but they're now called drink parties.
Do you have any useful tips for picking up men?
Well, I watch it. And I've noticed the most successful thing is when you get these lovely girls and they pitch their voices very low like this so the man can't hear. And the man has to get nearer and nearer. and that always works. And you find them in a few years' time, they'll have marriages and children behind them. Whereas I can't, you know, I say, hello, dears, and I don't get off with anybody.
I don't know why she never married. I don't think she knew herself particularly. I mean, she wasn't averse to sex in other people, and she knew all about it. I think one reason is that she always stuck by the commandments of the church.
I remember once being in the Brompton Oratory with Jennifer, and the clergyman came to the end of his sermon with the words, "I want to be absolutely clear about this. Any form of sex outside marriage is a mortal sin." And Jennifer said, "Hear, hear." I think she found life easier that way.
I don't think she was concerned about not being married. I think she was perfectly happy being a spinster of the parish of Westminster. You see, she was devoutly Catholic. All her family were very Catholic. It was probably the most important thing in her life.
Here we are.
Isn't your uncle close to the Cardinal or something?
Yes, he's the Cardinal Gentilhomo. He's his gentleman in waiting. This cardinal is his sixth one. He's got five other cardinals under the sod, and my grandfather was doing them before him.
Good heavens, a family industry.
It's an industry.
She did go to church regularly. She always went to the oratory on her motorbike, of course, on a Sunday morning, even if it was raining, which is odd because she lived a couple of hundred yards away from Westminster Cathedral, but she used to say that they turned it into a den of thieves. Well, all she meant by that is that they read the epistle in English or something like that.
I think she was very like my mother, really, in her approach to Christianity. I mean, really, they had kind hearts and would do anything for anyone, but this was combined with extraordinary snobbery. I mean, when, for example, the church introduced the sign of peace, I mean, the mere shaking of hands, they both behaved as though it was a terrible affront. Saying, I don't want to talk, shake hands with some stranger next to me in church.
How wonderful to see
You're
you.
very, very
Lovely
welcome.
greeting.
It's
Lovely
good
warm-
to see you.
A lovely warm welcome.
On a cold morning.
On a
Because it
cold
is cold
morning.
enough, isn't it, you know?
I feel I should kiss your ring, madam.
Good heavens,
That's it.
now, that's all gone into the past.
Not with me, it hasn't.
You're
We've
a
had to get through.
traditionalist, never mind.
She did believe that there was a God thinking about her all the time, and if she was naughty, he would, I'm afraid, have to punish her by sending her to hell. If she was less naughty, she'd be in purgatory, and then if she was very, very good, she'd go to heaven. She believed all that absolutely and completely. She believed the saints were the same sort of people as worked at The Spectator. So she, oh, it's St. Hubert's Day. I mean, he was such a marvellous man, you know. He went hunting.
In 1977, Jennifer went to cook at the small but influential magazine, The Spectator. Politicians and writers would be invited to their lunches, and though Jennifer was only the cook, her appearances in the dining room became as memorable as her food.
You used to cook for lots of places, but you cooked at The Spectator for a while. You write for The Spectator now.
Yeah, right, but I cooked for them first.
Yes.
At their sort of drunken end of the week lunches,
Yes.
which was great fun.
Yeah.
Enormous, but they never went home.
No.
They would stay there till 7.
Yeah.
But with lots of marvellous people. Did you ever come?
No, I've never been to a spectator lunch, no.
With no use now, they go home at 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We tried to maintain a quiet and dignified office here at the Spectator. We had distinguished people, cabinet ministers to lunch, to improve our knowledge of what was going on in the country. And Jennifer would interrupt continuously while handing the food around and offer her own comments on what anybody was saying.
I think she was deeply loved at the Spectator and got away with things that nobody else could have done under the circumstances. I remember once Enoch Powell sitting there expatiating on the American-English relationship, and Jennifer came up behind him and went, "Goochie, goochie, goo," on his bald head. And that I think only she could have done that and get away with it.
She never sat down with us, but she was always very much there. Do you remember?
Yeah.
She'd come in from the kitchen carrying things, announcing what the dishes were, describing them. And she'd join in any conversation
I was
that was
always
going
so
on.
surprised that she was so posh. I didn't think people who served ding-dings spoke like that. She was very bossy as well, wasn't
She was very bossy indeed, yes, yes.
When she was doing things which you could describe as menial, it wasn't that she was, as it were, regarded as part of the sort of serving orders who just had to wait quietly. The idea of her being quiet was completely... and lots of people were terrified. Lots of people who theoretically gave her orders were terrified of her.
Jennifer's total disregard for authority enabled her to keep her job despite the best efforts of her employers.
Oh, I was always sacking her, yes. And she had this great gift which more people should know about, which you ignore it when you're sacked. You just go on coming in. And it's quite difficult when that happens. One has the energy and to sack people only once or twice, really. And if they just go on showing up, you say, well, there you go. Oh, I loved her, so it was fine, really.
The Spectator's next editor kept up the tradition.
I sacked Jennifer because one afternoon I was sitting... My office was on the lower floors, and there was a great noise from upstairs, even greater than usual. And people came running down the stairs saying, "Jennifer's thrown all the coffee cups out of the window."
She had this tiny kitchen at the top of the Spectator building on the 3rd floor, miles up, all these little stairs. And the bloody people from the accounts department were always leaving dirty crockery in their coffee cups.
The usual sort of thing which irritated her. And so she took all the crockery in a great big... and she hurled them out of the window into the neighbouring funeral directors, which rather disturbed the repose of the departed. It was rather unfortunate. And that was the final straw. That was when she was sacked for the last and final time. Of course she was back the next week, but she was back as a food writer, not as a cook.
Jennifer's first column in The Spectator was pure Paterson. Her recipe, or receipts as she insisted on calling them, was for roast hedgehog, actually a meatloaf that contained no hedgehog at all.
Jennifer wrote in a sort of exclamatory style. Usually an exclamation mark would fit very well at the end of a sentence. But she wasn't so hot on commas. You could always hear her voice in her recipes. And as long as all the ingredients were there, it was all right. I think in one of them it was headed an unusual walnut cake. And we forgot to put the walnuts in the recipe, so it was certainly unusual.
Jennifer didn't shy away from her culinary disasters. They became fodder for her columns and television programmes.
I once had great trouble with the little ratafias because I did a receipt for lemon posset, and that's another miracle thing, where it thickens by the lemon juice. And you're meant to put the little ratafia biscuits in, and they're all meant to amalgamate. Now, I would have thought perfectly safe for anybody. And I got an infuriated letter from a reader saying that not only had he wasted 2 pounds of raspberries, but the Vicar's bridge work had been broken.
There were 2 schools of thought about Jennifer's cooking. One that it was good and one that it was bad. I thought, actually, that it was very nice because it was what I like, which is strong Mediterranean, lots of olives, lots of oil, anchovies. You could really taste it, and it made you feel that you were in a warm climate. but that view was not unanimous.
Very lovely. And, of course, my favourite anchovies. They add to practically every dish. They just sort of disappear and make a wonderful taste.
Yes, I was surprised not to find them in your coffee cake.
Often she kept things in the oven, not with the oven on, but instead of a larder. So she would look in there and say, oh, what have we got today? And there would be a bit of old bean salad been hanging around for a few days. And she had this impression that she would never get food poisoning because she'd been brought up in China and been brought up on Yangtze water, as she always said. And I think she really liked to challenge me a bit on this because she thought that I was a bit feeble as far as eating food that might be going a bit furry.
I'd be an Italian waiter for you. I don't think Brazilian waiters use pepper pots. Madame, the black pepper.
Jennifer had little time for what she regarded as the ridiculous modern preoccupation with kitchen hygiene.
I can keep that dirty hand going. Which, of course, is spotlessly clean.
Yes,
for the viewers who worry about such things.
She certainly had a bad example from my mother, who, I suppose as a result of being spoilt with servants in China, was always completely innocent of any desire to run a clean home. And really, the kitchens that we discovered operating in were disgusting.
I remember once I went into her bathroom at her house and I thought, God, this is like something from the Chainsaw Massacre. All these dismembered things in the bath. I thought, God, it's not Anthony, is it, in pieces? But it was just the turkeys for the fathers of the oratory of their Christmas lunch with the stuffing in plastic bags. It seemed a good place to keep them, I suppose.
It was an invariable pattern. She'd arrive in the morning about 8:30 on her moped with the salmon mousse in the back. And I think on one occasion, the dismembered turkey having been taken out of the bathtub. And she always wanted two things, a bottle of vodka and a good-looking young man. And I said, well, I can give you the first, but I can't really guarantee the second. And she would cook in our kitchen. It would be ready absolutely on time. She wasn't allowed to come into the refectory because ladies can't penetrate, but she would open the door and bellow through the door, "Happy Christmas, darlings," and off she'd go for her own Christmas dinner.
Jennifer mixed religion with her recipes in Feast Days, her first book published in 1990. It was warmly received. The eccentric cook and her motorbike were becoming well known around London, but nothing quite prepared the public for two fat ladies. In 1995, the BBC commissioned a pilot, and the ladies took to their bike and sidecar for the first time.
There was this old bike. It was an old BSA, and everything was back to front. And Jennifer, who had never driven a bike with a sidecar before, she'd been biking for 35 years, said, oh, well, I hope it'll be all right. Anyway, I fortunately didn't see that the first time she got on it, she put it in a ditch, because I was carefully ensconced somewhere else. Otherwise, I might have been slightly more apprehensive as I climbed into what I can only say resembled a coffin, and wedged into this thing, off we went. We did 3 perfect runs. And then the trouble with television directors is they always want one more. And we got into the bike. The great thing about Jennifer's vowels was you could always hear them. And I suddenly heard, oh my God, it's gone mad, I can't stop it.
Carol. You all right? I pressed everything wrong.
The pilot was unbelievable. It was pure anarchy. We'd never really seen anything quite like it. Jennifer very nearly killed the film crew. But the magic was there from the outset. We loved it, and Two Fat Ladies was born.
The series was an instant success in Britain, and to everyone's surprise, a hit throughout the world. Health-obsessed America welcomed them as a blast of British good sense. They were feted on all the best chat shows, and their cookbook was a bestseller. In Australia, they might have been royalty. Even the Japanese took to the ladies, though some viewers thought they were watching a horror movie.
The fact that they looked the way they did, that they were also big, they were never ever going to say, use skimmed milk, or they were never going to say, cut down on half the butter, or this is part of a healthy lifestyle. I expect they were both incredibly interested in bowel movements, as ladies of that generation tend to be. But apart from that, that was where health stopped.
4 egg yolks, mix that in a bit. Clarissa, I think all these little children will be egg-bound by the time we've finished with them.
Two Fat Ladies was a very strange experience for those of us who'd known her for years, watching it on telly, because on the one hand, you could see these antics, which the rest of us had watched over the blotter in the office, being transformed by the clever medium of a TV producer into art. There was Jennifer for the millions.
In the middle of filming a fourth series, Jennifer unexpectedly fell ill. She was taken into hospital and lung cancer was diagnosed.
I was actually with her in hospital when the doctors came to tell her that she had cancer, had lung cancer. And they were very sympathetic and said, "Is there anything we can get you?" "Yes, I'd rather like a cigarette."
They very kindly sent along a Macmillan nurse or something to tell her all about it. He said rather seriously, "Is there anything you'd like to talk about, Jennifer?" And she said, "Not really, dear. There's a rather good film on television this afternoon, Wicked Lady. Must see that." So she did, and it probably did her more good.
Jennifer died on the 10th of August 1999. Over 1,000 friends, family members and fans attended her funeral at the Brompton Oratory. As Jennifer had stipulated, her favourite motorbike helmet was carried in front of her coffin. She left the bulk of the considerable fortune she'd made from her television career to the Brompton Oratory Choir.
I think the money didn't matter very much to her. Possibly it provided a sort of cushion of knowing at least, as she herself said, that if she had to have a hip replacement, she'd at least be able to afford it now. So it was there, it was a consolation, but I don't think it really mattered to her. She never seemed to have a clue how much she had anyway. But I think she did love the adulation, and she was very amused by it. You know, the stories of when she arrived in Austria, my dear, it was like the Beatles. I think she loved all that.
She did enjoy superstardom. I mean, she loved coming back and saying she'd been on a float in the middle of Melbourne and 20,000 people had turned out to see her, or whatever absurd thing had happened. She absolutely loved that. She loved showing off, you see. I mean, if she had an audience of 3 people while she was singing Cole Porter lyrics in the office or something, she'd be very happy. But having an audience of 10 million or whatever she gets for telly, she'd prefer that. Of course she would.
Two Fat Ladies gave her finally the opportunity to be what she really had always wanted to be all her life. It was, to her, a very amazing experience. And she certainly said to me on more than one occasion that the Two Fat Ladies were the happiest days of her life.
Chin chin. And your very good health. It's been a lovely day, enormous fun. I loved it.
Your repose, your infernal Dante, you're the nose on the great Urante. I'm just in the way, as the French would say, de trop. But if, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top. You're the top. You're a Waldorf salad. You're the top. You're a Berlin ballad. You're the basic grand of a lady and a gent. You're an old Dutch master. You're Mrs. Astor. You're Pepsodent. You're romance. You're the steps of Russia. You're the pants on a Roxy usher. I'm a lazy lout that's just about to stop. But if, baby, I'm the bottom, you're the top.
Let's get out of here.